Lunch with Lee was recorded at Hive Sound Studios, Sydney's newest podcast, recording and all audio hub. If you have any recording needs, go to their website, Hive Sound Studios. Hello and welcome to Lunch with Lee. I'm your host, Shane Lee. Today on the show, James Bracey, an Australian television sports presenter, presenting the sport for Channel 9 News. He's the chief host for the NRL and prime time anchor for the Australian Open Tennis. He's a father of two girls and he's a mad North Sydney Bears supporter. Welcome, James.
Shane, what a treat it is to be here with you, mate.
Mate, we've got lots to talk about today. And Kent Joseph, a New Zealand-born businessman and CEO of Equity Transport Group, the parent company for Hughes, the longest-serving chauffeur company in the world since 1904. He's a passionate people person, he's a leader, and a huge supporter of the All Blacks and Black Caps. Welcome, mate.
Thanks, Shane. Good to be here.
Thanks, guys. Now, James, mate, you and I think we worked together when you back in the Sky days,
We
mate.
did.
How long ago was that now?
So, I started at Sky News in 2004 as a 19-year-old.
Yep.
So I reckon by the time we met, I'd say probably close to 2010, you and I were doing some stuff on there together, just talking cricket.
Mate, and I was sort of like thinking about the guests I've had in the show over the years. You've got to be one of the most perfect guys for doing the job that is so suited to them. Like
Yes.
you're a sports nut, and you're doing the footy. You've been
it's
involved like
the best gig in the
tennis,
world.
yeah.
So the package, like the one thing Nine's been really good at is seeing the value in sport. And, while we're sports, it's synonymous with sports broadcasting
Yes.
here. But once, coming on board for the footy at the start of 2017, and then once they announced they were getting the tennis, I thought, this is...
it's a good gig.
I'm sort of ticking both boxes.
Don't
somewhere
Melbourne
with
do
you.
tennis well?
Oh, they do it well. They do everything well.
Yeah.
I think, but the love for sport here, we picked up the Melbourne Cup last year. We're doing Olympics through to Brisbane, Paralympics as well. So
Poor bloke.
I'm in my happy space. And now I'm here with you, mate. Tell me it all off.
Two little girls. You tell the wife, we've got to go to work.
Yeah, sorry.
Got to go to tennis. And Kent, mate, I mentioned at the start, Hughes chauffeur-driven cars. It's the oldest. Well, it's 1904. So that's 20 years before Qantas.
It is, yeah. 16, I think. I think
Yeah.
Qantas was 19,
Yeah.
20, yeah. For sure.
So how does a boy that grows up in New Zealand end up, because I know you worked in the UK and I think you worked in Germany as well.
Yeah.
How do you end up in Australia working in one of the oldest companies in the world?
Almost by accident, I would say. So UK did the whole big OE thing. I was running some backpacker hostels over there.
Okay.
So, that was an adventure.
Good times.
Some good stories for off air. And then moved here, and I think moved to Bracey in 2010, and then worked for a sister company of the transport business now that running Hughes. So,
and what's the story behind when you tried? I think you came to Australia when you were 24. You were talking to recruitment officers, and it was quite tough to get a job here because you had no Australian experience.
yeah, we've either had this chat before. You've done your research.
I do my research, mate.
Yeah, so it was a funny one. I was applying for a few jobs. I thought it would be a walk in the park, and I got through to there was this one hotel group that I interviewed for, and I got through to, I think it was a fourth interview, and I mean at that point, you're just shooting the breeze, and I assumed that it was a shoo-in, but then I got the call from the recruitment agent that they went with somebody else, and it was due to lack of Australian experience, which was bizarre, I thought, given that New Zealand and UK experience is pretty similar.
Yeah.
But, and then I sort of fell upon the job that I ended up in Brisbane for a couple of years, and
that was with Qantas Valet, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was the valet service, which is all part of Equity's larger group.
Yep.
And that's running the valet.
We'll talk about it a bit more in a minit, but I think you guys use Hughes services as well.
Yeah, the last time I hopped in a Hughes hire car, I jumped in. Dawn Fraser was in the other seat.
Was
so,
she?
mate, you can organise an Australian sporting legend every time I'm hopping in to go for a
Did
ride.
she have a flag on a lap? Too early?
Oh, she's the best. Yeah, no, never. She's the best. But no, congratulations on your business, mate, because it was schmick. Run to perfection.
Beautiful.
Yeah, brilliant.
And James, I mentioned at the start, you're doing your perfect job, but so you're born in Newcastle?
Yeah,
you grew up there, which is a huge sporting town in itself.
Yeah, so I was born and bred Central Coast. You went to uni in Newcastle, so that whole area is that is rugby league.
Yeah, it is.
Heartland. So there was probably never going to be any other sport for me to follow, as my old man followed the Bears, hence why I followed the Bears, and then.
And the news with the Bears, so it's been announced now. So PNG.
Yeah, so PNG's coming, but the Bears, look, as we speak now, it looks like it's happening in Perth. When PVL wants something, PVL gets something.
Yes.
And I know he's deep in the negotiations with the WA government at the moment, which would be massive because I've said to so many people, the biggest thing it does is it gives a Western-based team an eastern side fan base. So every time they come into Sydney to play a Parramatta or a Penrith, Bears fans they'll come out in force. I've got no doubt about that, and really buy in.
You might need, when you go to PNG, when you're hosting the footy over there, you might need a sort of armour-plated used limousine over there.
Yes, that's a market we're probably going to keep avoiding, I think.
Do you do private jets? Might need one of those too while we're at it.
Hey, Ken, doing my research, I think you described yourself once as being super competitive but super humble. Is that from your New Zealand upbringing?
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say, competitive by choice and humble, probably not by choice. If you're not, you get, you get slapped down either physically or metaphorically over there. So, definitely super competitive though.
Because if you're doing some reading these days, like I've got 2 girls and a young son, and they reckon most kids are going to have probably 10 to 12 different careers in their life. Yep. The kids now generally change jobs pretty quick. But you started in this business nearly 20 years ago now or more, isn't it?
Yeah, so...
It's very unusual someone works from the bottom up to running the business.
Yeah, I mean, it surprises me as much as anybody, really. I was a 2-year tenure kind of guy before this role, and I actually came into this business thinking it would be the same thing, 2 years, but it just kept rolling, and I think it's about 15 years now in total with the group. Yeah. But, I think that's abnormal in this day and age. I think, people really are sort of 2 to 5 years in a role and then they bounce off onto something else. Yeah.
And is that what you're seeing in the media landscape at the moment? Because it's a moving feast at the moment.
I often get frustrated because I remember when I was coming through, at that late teens age and got in the door, it was like you would have done anything just to stay there. I was just like, whatever the boss needs, I will do.
Yeah.
And these days,
a lot of those stories are coming out now.
Wait for my memoirs, or someone else's too.
It's like one day.
Now we know how he got his job. Anyway, we digress. But I notice these days that there's an impatience about youngsters coming through. That they're like, "How do you do your job? Like, when can I start?" And that's. Just trying to break it to them that this is for me now. It's been 20 years in the making. It's very hard for them to sort of foresee the fact that they could possibly put in 10 years of behind the scenes work before they're sitting in front of a camera.
And the business that you built, I mentioned at the start, you're a real people person, but are you really cognizant of that when you're employing new people? Is it because culture is obviously a big part of the business? Any business that lasts that long, culture's got to be huge.
Yeah, culture's huge. Look, I mean, just to clarify, I don't love all people. I recognise the need to be able to relate to people to get what you need done in business, probably as much in sport as well. But I mean, just on James's point, we've had a few people pass through the business who first week in the door, they're chatting about how they get to the CEO position.
Yeah.
And
slow down, mate.
Give it 10 years, pal.
Why don't you watch one of those cars first?
Yeah, exactly. But it's an interesting one. We I mentioned on another podcast I was on last year actually that we hire culture first. Yeah, and that's still the case obviously today. We've had some great hires who weren't particularly good at any skill set or task, but they were just a great fit. Great to have around, and we've had the opposite as well. We've had some absolute guns with incredible experience, but they're just an awful fit with the rest of the people. And it's amazing how even in a company that's got about 150 office employees and over 1,000 drivers, how one person can drag that down pretty quickly.
And you find the same in the media space because you're having different owners almost every couple of years, and
that's a scary thing because one CEO or one boss might be your biggest fan. But if they head out the door and the new one comes they might want to put their own imprint on it. So I reckon that's one of the toughest things, probably in my position, that you need to navigate is when you're in a role, you're in that role that people can use to make a statement for their, I guess, their own job and their own job security as well. Luckily, along the way, I mean, it's sort of that, the whole no dickheads policy thing.
It works.
I think you got, you try and take that attitude in. I know the Wild World Sports team certainly do. Our newsroom's very much the same as well. And I think that's just, if you don't act like a flog, then hopefully you won't end up getting treated like one.
The no dickheads policy is a great one until you're the one getting sacked. But I want to ask you about. I mentioned that you're the chief host for the NRL, which is a team sport, and then you had the tennis, which is an individual sport. You find the players very different.
Chalk and cheese.
I know. I think they are.
Chalk and cheese. Yeah. And you can't blame them either because they're growing up in that world of just it is all about them. They've got a whole team around them where everything's focused on them. So their mentality is very different.
And often in the sort of European backgrounds, they're a lifeline for the whole family.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of pressure on them.
A lot. And it's cutthroat. Like there's always the next one coming through. There's always, you look at these, your Stefanos Tsitsipas's and Alexander Zverev's. They were the guys that everyone thought post Big Three would be, and then this whole other wave of Sinner and Alcaraz is sort of coming in over the top of them, and they're going, oh wait, we haven't won a slam yet. Leave us alone. Where's our fresh air?
Sinner was interesting, wasn't it? Poor guy. I really felt for him, but he just. There's a rule. You need a real belief to go to that next step and to win it. Yeah.
There's a Australian tennis is we're still looking for our next Ash. Off the back of that. So
I was so disappointed when she retired.
So was Channel 9.
Yeah.
she was our meal ticket for the next few years, and all of a sudden she's like, I'm done hanging up the racket. Like, no.
We need Nick back on the court too.
Oh,
he's great for ratings.
Yeah, he's great for ratings, but I look at him now, and I think his priorities are slowly shifting. He's so big online and the socials, and he's what do you get? I think Andy Roddick called him he's a tennis influencer. That's what he is. Which he's found a space. That's he's got a huge following. That he walks around Melbourne Park. And he spent the whole 2 weeks there, even though he was out in the first round. Yeah. But he walks around, and it's like a swarm of bees just following him. Like he's just,
Well, he tries to keep his head, keep his head down, driving a bright green Tesla.
You can see him coming.
Talking about culture, Tony Butterfield, which grew up your way, the Newcastle
Knights legend.
I met him many times years ago, and when he was playing for the Knights. Educated leaguey, lawyer, I think, and became head of the Players Association. And I bumped into him down in Chinatown in around 2000, just after, I think there was a Bulldogs rape scandal. And I think the Knights ran rampant through some university pre-season, so it was issue after issue. And I said to Butts, how's your job going, mate? As head of the union, basically, the players. He said, mate, the culture's all wrong. We need to educate these players how to behave both on and off the field. Need to get some proper business guys in to run this game. And this girl walks past, he said, Jesus Christ, look at the tits on her. And in his defence, they were pretty good. But culture is a massive thing. And talk about the All Blacks probably have the best culture, sporting culture in the world, I think.
Yeah, they didn't. So they brought that no dickheads policy in, I think, in the early 2000s. There were some gun players that were individuals, I think. Obviously it wasn't in the camp or anything, but from what I understand and what I've read, and they rolled that through. And I think Graham Henry coming in sort of brought a lot of that stuff in, and it's spoken about in a few of the autobiographies and things from Richie McCaw and co.
He's a fantastic leader.
Yeah, but that was, I think there was a huge cultural shift for them to go that way. But I think they sort of they're the pin-up boys now of good culture in a team.
Massive overachievers, and like we are in Australia with our population, we overperform, don't we?
Well, we saw it at the Olympics last year, 18 gold. Like it's just when you see what we're doing, especially with like the fact that the US v Aussies in the pool and that we can even keep up with them is pretty remarkable. Yeah. But we've prided ourselves on that forever and a day, and hopefully it continues. It's good for me if that happens.
Talk me through covering the Olympics. Like for any person, like unfortunately with the I was out of the Australian cricket team when it was in the Commonwealth Games in Malaysia. It was a bad year to be out of form because the boys said that was an unbelievable trip. But to be part of the Olympics, well, it must have been. Like it's an absolute dream, wasn't it?
It was pretty loose over there, wasn't it? From what I heard too, in the village.
Yeah, allegedly. Have you been affected by anything on this podcast?
I'm sure I've heard stories of furniture being thrown out windows and all sorts. Anyway, it's an amazing beast, the Olympics. Like it just. And the Australian Open's it's a version of that. It's when and we like the Djokovic issue this year, right? Like it's. You talk about everything's heightened in those sort of events because the world sort of shuts down and gives that event its moment, and it's all sort of anyone's talking about. So as soon as there's a drama, it can just snowball really quickly. And I think the Olympics is the same, But the one good thing probably about the Olympics is once the sport starts, we've gone to Olympics, but the traffic will be terrible, or this won't be ready, or there won't be water in the pool. Once it starts, and it just looks after itself.
Do you have a favourite sporting moment, either as a host or a commentator, or even just being there as a kid? Is a famous sporting moment that sticks out for you?
I went to
the same question too.
Yeah, Beijing in 2008. I went as a young journalist. I was like 23. They flew me over there with David Spears, Suzanne Lattimore, and Eric Young, who were like our super guru senior presenters at Sky News, and there was just this kid in the back of the Jetstar plane going, okay. And no cameraman, like VJ Kit, like the works, doing it all myself. But it was before Usain Bolt was enormous. And I went there the night of the final, and I've got a photo from, this is when we used cameras. I actually took it as he crossed the finish line to win. There was no one around me. Like it was bizarre when I look back on it, because now it's the hottest ticket in town to be there for the men's 100 final. But to see him in full flight,
that was his first win.
That was the big one to start, to get it going.
3 in a row, didn't he? Ken, do you have a favourite sporting moment that sticks out for you?
Yeah, I've got a couple. I've got some sporting moments that still induce nightmares. So I've got those. But
should we talk some of the Bledisloes back in the late 90s?
Yeah. Probably 2011 Rugby World Cup, the All Blacks finally getting that monkey off their back and winning by 1 point over France.
That's a huge moment.
that was an awful sort of 79 minutes leading up to the final one, and then probably again in 2015, when they went back to back, that was a relief. But yeah, no, I've had my share of pretty bad ones as well, I think.
And James, I mentioned at the start you've got 2 daughters, and the shift in the last 10 years on women's sport and how that's come, like how they're, I won't say just improved, but the coverage has improved, everything's improved. There's real money in now. You must be proud of that.
There is, yeah, it's huge. I think every time, that's one thing. Every time Nine's acquiring rights, it's like it's the full array, and we're showing every NRLW game now. We're exclusive broadcasters of Women's State of Origin, and pushed for it to be 3 matches rather than 2, which never made sense to me when you got a series. But yeah, so my little Matilda, like when the Matildas were doing their thing,
that was amazing.
It was amazing watching the groundswell of support just whip up from nowhere.
Yeah,
and she loved it.
Imagine if they won.
Oh my God! But the match against the French, and it's just one of those moments you'll never forget. And then I was lucky enough to be there for the England semi-final when Sam Kerr scored that goal from downtown.
I'm really the women's touch as well, amazing. But the women's, as you said, NRLW, fantastic. Yeah. I haven't got quite across the AFL yet. I reckon they've got a way to go.
They're working on it.
Scores of 1-2,
and that's their biggest issue, because it's in the end, and mate, in the end, it's entertainment, and that's their biggest issue. Is just trying to work out how you can get more goals kicked. And
speaking of getting more goals kicked, so when you started with I lost my train of thought here, mate. When you started, what's the first business you started with? The
valet business.
Yeah. So when you started with the valet business, you saw opportunities that obviously people would come into Qantas, they drop their car off, and then they'd say things like, "Do you want a limo at the other end?" But they were selling the wrong way.
Yeah, that's right. So when people drop their car, this was Brisbane, for example. So they dropped their car from Brisbane, they're flying to predominantly Melbourne or Sydney, and so we were selling a chauffeur service at the other end, and there were KPIs set for how many of those we could sell, along with car washes. Wash your car when you're there, and one of the things I noticed straight away, people were trying to sell to these people. Do you want a limousine? And to everybody, that sort of sounds like a stretch limousine. And then I just changed the wording. I spoke to them and I said, listen, just ask them or give them a bit more of a sales pitch. Just say, hey, listen, I heard the taxi line in Sydney's really long. Do you want us to have a chauffeur waiting for you when you get there? And we went from, basically bugger all sales in a day to dozens and dozens. And we hit that KPI mark almost immediately. Purely same people selling to the exact same market, just changing the way, they said it. So I sort of took that through a few other things.
And then the business grew off the back of that. I think
massively.
It was a 10% increase just in that, by just positioning the sales pitch differently.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you pictured it well for them too, because there's nothing worse than, especially if your flight goes, up, and you're waiting and getting off the plane and then waiting for your bag and then getting to the taxi queue and it's a kilometre long.
Yeah.
And just,
Well, people who are probably valet parking, they've probably got some money, but then they're time poor.
Perfect target market.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd make some stuff up. I can say this now because it was a few years ago, but we'd make stuff up like, we've heard it's raining in Melbourne. You know, in there. And
get there, it's 40 degrees and sunny.
Yeah. Melbourne, the weather changes there, doesn't it?
4 seasons in one day.
So you're responsible for everyone saying that Melbourne has 4 seasons in one day.
It could be me. Yeah. I'm the other Finn brother.
Now, James, I want to ask you about just from a corporate perspective, working in the media. You must think every day, like, are you sort of checking your own words? Because these days, what you can and can't say, I don't know, maybe Trump's going to change things to the work world that we were in. Yep. But did you become really nervous all of a sudden? Were you worried about not offending anyone? Because, like, these days you can offend people you never knew existed.
I'm a 40-year-old white male. I'm already offending people.
At the moment. Yeah, we have feelings too, you know, everyone.
So well, and to be honest, like you tread a lot. I've always tried to play a pretty straight bat with my role and not be a headline maker. Like that's for the panelists I have around me because they're the legends of the game. So I've always sort of taken that approach. What do people at home want to hear asked and want to know about? So I've tried to make sure I stayed in my lane, but then obviously you're spending a lot of time talking. You know, when we're on air, on air for 8 hours for for the tennis and things like that, and it's all ad lib. There's no scripting. There's no auto cue. There's nothing. The only time I'll read an auto cue is for 6 p.m. news because that's timed to the second and you have to. Yep. But everything else is just off the cuff or from notes I've written and you're sort of referring to them. So there's a lot of room for error.
Yeah, I'd be gone in a day.
Yeah, And look, some people are, some people have made a career out of it. Like Carlos and Carl going off piste and doing what Carl does. That's his thing. Kyle, and with radio, and that's their.
And what about working with Joey? He must be on eggshells all the time.
Oh, mate, you just never know, especially if it's late at night and he's starting to get tired or hungry or thirsty.
What a legend he is! As a footballer, mate. I tell you what, it's funny if I'm ever listening to Matty Johns is a great media person. There's no doubt about that.
Is he ever?
But his tips on the footy are often very, very wrong.
Joey's
a spot on. Joey's a spot on. His knowledge is super.
Mate, he sees the game a minute ahead of everyone else.
He does.
Yeah, and one of the things in the commentary box, I can stand behind the commentators, and I'm watching the players with the ball, and Joey's looking over there and seeing the formation of what plays coming after, and it's like watching
the master.
Yeah, the master at work there, and then you listen to some of the stuff, and he'll predict what's going to happen.
Mate, he has a crystal ball, and speaking of crystal balls, you sort of need that in any business these days, don't you? And you mentioned off air at the start, you're sort of going in the tech space. Is that a way you need to diversify and may spread your risk, but also grow your business?
Yeah. So when I came into the chauffeur business, we were miles behind in technology. I think the whole industry was, which sort of opened the door for Uber. So I think it's well known that the transport industry across the world was massively behind. So I saw that gap, and we spent a huge amount of money on building up the tech and retaining some relevance, in a new marketplace. So as we were doing that and, building out tech, we found a lot of difficulties dealing with, different technology companies. So we started to do some of it ourselves, worked out we could do it ourselves for cheaper. And then, thought, why don't we start this and go across some other industries? A lot of the stuff we're building is industry agnostic. It's simple stuff that can be used across completely different businesses. So,
is AI involved, like part of all that?
Yeah, we're doing a lot in AI now and automated workflows and that sort of stuff. Like all of our allocations to drivers and things are now driven by AI and automated workflows. So working out where people live to give them the first job in the morning, and then looking at traffic. We look at weather. For, if there's, a storm coming in the afternoon, we start applying a bit of a buffer because we know traffic slows down. So AI is driving all of that stuff.
And it must be scary for the industry you're in.
Mate, I'm gone. Yeah, I reckon 5 years' time.
Well, I saw Pat Cummins, our Australian cricket captain, is heading up a tech conference in India next month before the IPL, and the actual ad was totally AI. It wasn't even him. It was an image of him and him speaking. I could not tell the difference.
That freaks me out, though.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
Yeah. I think
and the videos.
And he started talking. He started talking full Hindi in the thing, and he's changed, but in his accent, it was mind blowing.
Yeah, it's. I keep hearing people saying you got to embrace it. it's not here to steal jobs. It's here to make it easier to do your job, which I'm all for. But putting the thought of a fake me. No one needs to see more than one of me.
There's a headline.
It's daunting thinking about it though, because it's there probably are a lot of people out there who are looking over their shoulder going,
big time. It's happening fast, and it'll be interesting to see where the media landscape goes, because almost now with social media, everyone's sort of a journalist in their own way.
Don't get me started on that.
Yeah. Well, what are your thoughts with that?
It's.
You do a lot of social stuff yourself as a part of a requirement, or you don't want to?
Well, I reckon that's how you can get yourself into trouble a lot too. It's just had a few bevies and think it's a good idea to post something. Learning from other people's mistakes on that one's trying to avoid it. But it's I love how much it has opened up, and that you've got it's social media you've got to embrace to an extent. Whether I'm on it. I hardly post.
Yeah,
I know my agent would love me to be doing a lot more on there, because I think there's a lot of easy cash being made out there from influencers and et cetera, et cetera. But I haven't got much to sell, Shane.
Well, I don't know about that, mate. I think. I always want to ask the question. I understand there's confidentiality around, but when a guest gets into a chauffeur-driven car from Hughes, like businesses talk about having really good CRM. The information some of these drivers must have on the actual client. People, and obviously you can't share that, but there must be ways you can find out and improve their experience by, whether they drink certain water in the car, or I don't know. Around those ways. There's a line between becoming sort of creepy and sort of over familiar, but
So what we do is we get the client themselves to communicate that with us. Okay. So if they have any preferences or whatever, they can communicate that through an app or through messaging functions. But the drivers don't communicate anything that's gone on in the vehicle back to us, whatsoever, unless they need to for a particular reason. But no, they're very, very confidential. We have a lot of celebrities and stuff. We take musicians and things around country. They're the interesting ones. They've got particular things they like to consume, I think, in the car that they probably don't tell us beforehand, but it's all confidential.
I've had this guy from Manly Taxis pick me up over the years, and when I see him in the drive, I go, fuck, not him again. This fucking talks all the way, doesn't shut up. Fuck, mate. I've heard your shit stories before. I hope he's not listening to the show, but anyway, you know who you are, mate. That's frustrating. Now, James, I ask everyone who comes on Lunch with Lee the same question. A young boy or girl wants to go into the media world. Yep. What advice are you giving them?
Do it. Get in as early as you can.
Right. Okay.
Work your backside off, even if it's for free.
Yeah.
Just get in the door of a joint. That's my big thing. Is just I managed to get in the door of a newsroom when I was 19, and the rest is history.
Do you need a communications degree? Do you think, or just get in there?
Mate, I got one in the end. I kept studying just to get the bit of paper. I haven't had one boss ever ask me if I'm qualified. Not once.
Right.
So I got communications degree, majored in journalism.
We know you got the job in the first place. And a young boy or girl wants to go into the world of business, whatever format it is. What advice are you giving them?
I'd say study psychology, understand people. It's all people. Even talking or talk relationships, how things work, why they work, why people make decisions that they do. I don't think it matters what industry you're going into, but from a sales perspective, what is it that these people want to hear? What is it they need to be told? So psychology, just understand people. It's all people. Even in an AI world, people are driving AI.
It's a great point. Like, you look at the best sports coaches. And everyone always says that it's like your Craig Bellamy's, your Wayne Bennett's. You would have maybe had some over the years that were just not so much a coach. Just it meant they could read you. They knew they were interested in your personal life, which gave you that comfort to then go and be your best version.
Yeah, I understand whether you're a stick or a carrot or what motivates you. It's funny. Like a few things over my career. I remember when my grandfather passed away. It was the first sort of person close to me passed away. And I went out to bat next day for Mossman, and it was the highest score for Mossman just till last year, 210 not out.
Yeah.
So there was a real over emotional thing that sort of made me tick, and I sort of used that further in my career. But it's hard to recreate that sort of those feelings. But it's it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, listen, I want to thank you both for coming on Lunch with Lee. That was a good fun chat. We're gonna have some nice lunch here in Hive Sound Studios. And we're going to have a few beers as well, because I think I'm getting a Hughes Use the chauffeur home.
Mate, so am I. So
I hope Dawny's in it too. She can cover her eyes. She's a good chat.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Thanks very much for coming on the show. Cheers.
Thanks, Shane.
Boys. That's it for Lunch with Lee this week. A big thank you goes out to our guests, James Bracey and Kent Joseph. Thanks to our sponsors, Hive Sound Studios, Richard Bowman & Co. and Hughes Chauffeur-Driven Cars. Make sure you hit follow on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts from. And do us a favour, hit 5 stars. And when you're there and you're passionate, please leave a review. We'd really appreciate that. And come find us on Instagram at I'm at Lunch with Lee. Our official Lunch with Lee photography was done by Felicity Kelly. You can find her on Instagram at Felicity Kelly Portraits. And once again, thanks to our super producer, Dan McHugh. Come check us out next time for another cracking episode of Lunch with Lee. We'll see you then.